Welcome back to another episode of the Ohio College Tech Prep Podcast. My name is Matt Cola, and I am the Tech Prep Coordinator out of the Northeast region from Kent State University. Today we have the second part of our new educators interview with former CTE educator and current Tech Prep Coordinator at Lakeland Community College, Lucy Ott. So, without further ado, I am going to go right into that pre-recorded interview.
What are CTSOs? How can a teacher get involved in them? And what is the responsibility of a CTE teacher as an advisor of a CTSO?
So CTSO stands for Career Tech Student Organization, and I've been an advisor for 3 different ones, so I'll speak to the ones that I'm most comfortable with. And my daughter has also been in one. So they're just a great opportunity. We have Business Professionals of America, which I was an advisor of, DECA, which my daughter was a member of, Future Business Leaders of America, I advised way back when, Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, HOSA, National FFA organization, and Skills USA, which was my most recent organization. So I just think it's an incredible opportunity for students to learn all sorts of skills, not only employability skills, but problem solving, project completion, time management, and networking with industry partners. So a lot of my students would say that this was the highlight of the program when we would go to competition. So what does a CTSO do for students? Basically, what we would do was get them involved in leadership activities. We would travel. We would also have them competing in kind of a industry-related competition. So it could be anything from public speaking to Excel spreadsheets to graphic design to networking, computer hardware. We had our students competing on all different levels and taking them to Columbus if they made it to state. So my daughter, just throw a little prop out for her in DECA, she went to state competition for her, I think it was hotel management competition. But my students love the opportunity. Some students don't even get out of their area. So just even traveling is a lesson in itself. To get involved, you really just have to start a chapter, send students, pay your dues. It's pretty easy. Another thing that is a really big part of the organizations are community service and leadership skills. So they provide curriculum that students could use for employability skills, but they also have opportunities for students to do leadership activities and community service. So it just is an overall great experience. Again, it's a resume builder. It might help students connect in the field with industry partners, and, every little touch on a networking in the industry is a great thing for kids.
I don't want to get into the weeds here on CTSOs. I think they could be an entire episode on their own, but I did have a quick follow-up. Are CTSOs part of the program, or are they extracurricular and done outside of the program, or is it some combination of both?
I think some career centers and schools do it as an extracurricular. Some do it built right into the program. I think most of them do provide an opportunity for a student to get involved. For us at the Lakeshore Compact, I can speak for us. We, especially Melinda O'Connor and I, always had all of our students involved in some respect. Every student in our programs competed at the basic level, and then if they advanced on, we went to the regionals, then we went to states. I never had anybody go to nationals, but I know Melinda has a couple times.
Great, thank you. What should a new teacher know about WebXams? First off, can you tell me what a WebXam is, how a new CTE teacher can prepare their students, how the teachers can get data regarding those exams and ensure their students get credit from them? Really anything that you think would be helpful for a new CTE teacher to know about WebXams.
So as a new teacher in career tech, when I was first teaching this, I'll be honest, I was stressed about WebXams. It's a priority. It's something that students can earn college credit for. It's directly tied to the curriculum that the ODEW provides us. And you see your scores compared to, the state scores. And I was so nervous about giving web exams, making sure that my students pass them. And I'll be honest, most of my students passed the web exams. And so a web exam tests those competencies of the 4 courses that most career tech programs offer. And Some have college credit tied to it. So not all of the web exams have college credit, but it's important. So hopefully they pass it and they earn that. If they're going to college, they can use it. It's really important to pay attention to the deadlines and when you can give the web exam and, what course you're teaching at the time and when it's appropriate to, pre-test, to test, to retake. And the directors should know all that information. Web exams and, my experience in 14 years have changed quite a bit. So make sure you're, checking into that every year, that there are no changes that are made. We know that infamous yes question that has to be answered on the web exam. I think we try to say that in anything we do. Anytime I present to high school students, just make sure that they're saying yes, that we can post credit, especially in my new role where that is, part of my job. It makes it easier on me. I say that most of my students pass the web exams, but it's important to know that you can prepare them. When I would prepare students by making Quizlets from the web exam terminology that is listed in the ODEW competencies. I would recommend as a new teacher, if you have the opportunity to take the web exams, that you would sit and take them. They do provide those opportunities, so pay attention. If you can sign up for that, please, try to do that. You could also be a test writer for the test questions, which I think is really important if you are ever able to do that. I've done that a few times where I actually went down to Columbus and sat and wrote test questions with a group of people. And so you have input, and it makes it easier to give the test when you have input of what those questions might be. Know that for a web exam, a teacher might have a strength. I taught 4 different courses. I had a strength. Computer hardware was my strength. And I knew my students were going to do really well in computer hardware. Network security was always the hardest test. So it's important to know when you take the 4 web exams, it's an overall score and you have to pass, I think it's 3. So if they do really well in hardware and they're not doing as good at network security, usually they were able to pass their overall score and be done with the web exams. But just, encouraging them to get a good night's sleep, to take it seriously, to eat, a good breakfast, just like any other high stakes test. It's important to make sure they realize that it does mean something. It could be a pathway for graduation. It could earn them college credit. So we want to try to, encourage that so that we have the best performance we can.
Shifting gears a little bit, how should a new CTE teacher integrate work-based learning into their program, and what is the best way to get their program to that 15% participation mark, which is mandated by the state, correct?
Yes. Yeah. It was like 12.5% when I first started. And I'm like, how do you have 0.5% as a kid? But anyway, so I was thinking about this for work-based learning because it is not always easy. There are some areas where it's easier, advanced manufacturing, construction, those are easier to get work-based learning. I was in the world of IT and people don't trust high school students with, data and important things and maybe, like networking a whole building. So I had to get creative, but I think the definition that is on the website, it says sustained interactions with industry or community professionals and real workplace settings to the extent practicable or simulated environments at an educational institution. It goes on a little bit more, but we had to get creative in how that looks for us. I reached out to libraries in the area, anywhere that had computers. I reached out to the hospitals in the area and we did it as volunteer work, but they were able to do work-based learning. The schools all took students of mine. So you had to be creative, but you also can be creative in the real world hands-on projects that you're doing in the classroom if you have an industry partner that will kind of represent several students at a time. So if you think outside the box and you really read the definition of what work-based learning is, you can get creative and create those learning environments for your students. I would say it's really important to have a good advisory team and build your advisory team with those industry partners. I would promote every opportunity that you're doing, your students have in that advisory because it catches on. Like, oh, Mrs. Ott's student was working at Steris and he did really well. And, so we're going to bring another kid on, or Progressive used to, host students for us. So just building those advisory teams. And then I would recommend being on any advisory teams that you can, VACs, communicating what your students can do and will do to have that opportunity. I would say if you're doing work-based learning, I had to have a rubric and a process for selection of because it's 15%, right? That's not every student. So how do you decide who goes out? It has to be black and white. You have to have a rubric. You have to have a score system. You're sending these 4 out to interview at Lake West for their IT position. And this is why. And it cannot have a gray area, because then you get into real tricky situations of why did you pick that person and not me? I would also go to tech prep events where you network with people in the industry. So a little plug for our tech prep folks. LinkedIn was huge for me to find people and alumni that I didn't know are in this field. And so now I'm reaching out to a former student and I'm saying, hey, would you be interested in either being an ambassador for me, or would you take students for their work-based learning or have us on a field trip? So LinkedIn was huge for me. It's a great opportunity to network back with people in your field. And then don't be the only person looking. Let your students play a role in finding that work-based learning placement. If they find something you might not even have thought about. So don't take it all on yourself. Have that be a part of a project that you're doing, looking for, employment opportunities or internship opportunities. Talk to your tech prep coordinators, talk to your post-secondary education people around, and talk to your directors and see if they have any leads for you.
We know that graduation requirements have changed over the past few years. What sorts of graduation seals might a new CTE teacher best assist their students in earning?
So at Lakeshore Compact, we were most responsible for the Ohio Means Jobs seal, which is why in this new role, I am trying to provide some opportunities for high school students, middle school students to come and get their little check marks off of the Ohio Means Job. Basically, they have to sign off on 19 areas of employability skills. And so we're trying to provide some of that here for those middle school and high school students. But also the technology seal is a big one that can be earned by submitting your CTE curriculum to your directors. And so my students who passed the class and were successful got the technology seal. There's a community service seal that maybe your CTSOs would sign off on to earn the community service. There are so many opportunities. There's the honors diploma seal, which my daughter personally got it through her work-based learning experience. So they have allowed for 2 substitutions on the honors diploma. If you are in career tech education, one of them was the work-based learning experience. So she didn't have the criteria for ACT. She didn't take the ACT. She was able to substitute her work-based learning. And so she earned the honors diploma seal because of career tech education. So that was really awesome. Industry recognized credentials seal, if you earn those 12 points on the industry recognized credentials. And then the student engagement seal, which I think you could probably, if you were really involved in your CTSO, would probably work for student engagement seal. So yes, this is a pathway for graduation. I've had several students use the seals as one of their ways to graduate. So it's a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned my next question a little bit, and I think it's important to delve deeper into this, especially for our new educators. So what are industry recognized credentials? How many points does a student need to graduate? And how can a new CTE teacher incorporate these into their programs?
So an industry recognized credential is a way of employers knowing that you have passed a high stakes test in a skill area, and it is recognized by industry. So, and the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce has a list of appropriate industry credentials, and I know my CTE partners are trying to establish those 12 points for all of their programs so that it is another graduation pathway. I think it's important to know that not all credentials are as easy as others. And so when you're trying to pick your credentials for your students to build those 12 points, I would be realistic and I would think, is this attainable by most of my students? Of course, you're going to have those higher level students that are going to pass everything. I have a kid that, he sends his email. He's like 6 badges underneath it, from credentials. And it's amazing. But your typical student is not going to be able to do that. So it's important to think about that. And then I think there's a fine line between passing an industry recognized credential, especially to those who have difficult time taking tests or have, accommodations that are necessary. And then, and giving up other stuff. So are we focused all on industry recognized credentials? Or are we going to do some other stuff that allows them, to add other things to their resume? So it's just a matter of trying to prioritize that for the student and make it work best for each individual student. Be an advocate for students as they're test taking. Make sure you use all the supports that are provided. I had my classroom set up as a testing center, so I could do the CompTIA test right in my classroom. So that made it really easy. But I had to know the things like those laws, like accommodations and the things that you had to follow for students. Make sure you know that information too. And you talk with your supports at your high schools, so that you talk to the supports at your career centers, and make sure that, you have those established and that everybody knows that this is going to happen during this test. The test being the industry recognized credential test. And then industry recognized credentials in the field of IT are difficult. So, I had to figure out if that was like a super important piece, if, who's going to graduate, who's not going to graduate, and then try to prioritize it.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. This has been a really amazing discussion, and I hope all of the new educators out there who are listening find it as helpful as I do. But I want to ask the last question that I ask anyone I have on the show. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that you would like to?
Well, in talking about this, I just realized what great experiences these kids are getting. I can speak for my program and a lot of my colleagues' programs that I know pretty well, but I just think it's an amazing opportunity for students. That's why I was so excited that my daughter got involved in one as well. If you think about it, they're getting 900 hours in a content area in an in-demand field. And it's just super exciting that they come away with a good resume. They might have all this extra thing. They're going to be competitive against the other students. They're competing for jobs. They're competing for college. They're competing for whatever they're competing for. They've already given themselves the step up.
I agree. Thank you. That is all the time that we have for today. So thank you again, Lucy. I will make sure that your contact information is in the episode description in case people want to follow up with you on anything you discussed. But thank you so much for joining us, and to all of our listeners, please rate and review us on whatever podcast service you're listening, and I hope you'll join us next month.